Welcome to Creators with Influence, a podcast by the American Influencer Council on the intersection between the creator economy and digital culture.
Happy Black History Month.
Yes.
And Safer Internet Day as well. We are toasting with some wine. At least I think most of us have a glass of wine. This wine is from the McBride Sisters, which is the largest Black-owned wine company in the United States. Yes, round of applause. And supporting entrepreneurs, supporting small businesses, supporting Black-owned businesses is fundamental to the AIC. So we want to encourage all of you, I'm sure as you already do, but to continue to urge others to support and buy from Black-owned businesses. So I just wanted to say welcome and cheers. And here's Qianna Smith Bruneteau.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. When I look around this room, I see such a diverse group, and that is intentional. It's important that as a business leader, when I enter a room, that I'm not the only person of color, and the other people in that room understand why that's important. You're here tonight because if you're navigating websites and social media platforms, it's important that they're creating spaces that equally support the diverse community that reflects the world around us and the society that we live in. And I'm going to pass it over to Isa Duggar, who's moderating this conversation tonight.
Hey, everybody. How's everyone feeling tonight? Woo! All right, Brooklyn, I hear y'all. Hi, everyone. I am Asa Duggar. I am a career creator. I'm also a member of the American Influencer Council, and I'm also today's moderator for our conversation. I'm seated alongside an amazing panel with amazing in the social media influencing industry, in the social engineering industry, and I just would love for you guys to go ahead and introduce yourself, starting with Nneya.
Hi, I'm Nneya Richards. I am a travel and lifestyle content creator. I'm a founding member and co-chair of Goodwill Committee on American Influencer Council with Skinny on video there. Hey. I started my career at 16 years old as a founding contributor of Teen Vogue magazine. So from a pretty early age, I was in spaces where I was the only Black person. And decided to continue to be in the spaces because, I hate my mental health. I'm kidding. But decided to make a way for people that looked like me. And especially in the travel space, I thought it was needed. I'm a bylines writer at publications like Travel and Leisure, Condé Nast Traveler, Forbes, and thought it was really important that people knew there was a Black woman writing these articles. And that's where the influencer space is so important. Seeing people that look like you traveling and seeing who's telling these stories is like monumental. And I think it changes where people feel comfortable going and that we're opening up worlds for people. And that's something that we try to do on American Influencer Council, whether it's mental health advocacy, democratizing the pay gap, working with different platforms, marketing agencies. We are here for the influencers because sometimes it feels like no one else is there for us.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. All right, we're going to go to Pierre next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pierre, also known as Visuals by Pierre. I am a career creative, multidisciplinary artist that does damn near anything creative under the sun. But my mediums of photography and filmmaking have been the things that got me here to where I am today. And having worked with amazing brands and companies such as, NFL, US Open, sup Qianna, Nike, Adidas, name of just a few. I also have my own docuseries entitled Contemporaries, which features a bunch of my creative contemporaries where we storytell and tell them about their journey. I also am a founding member of the AIC. Thanks to Qianna for being like a spearhead in the space that is much needed. And for that on, I'm just a career creative and creative consultant that wants to help and bridge the gap between creatives and their dreams, their endeavors, and their journeys alike.
Woo! Come on, y'all. They deserve a round of applause for that.
And next, we're going to go to Simone.
Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. It's not too late to say that. Happy all the things. Simone Oliver. I recently joined BET as SVP of digital content.
Woo! Yeah.
And I went there because I want BET to survive. I want them to evolve and survive. They're an important voice within culture. I started my career at the New York Times. I was just out of school, and I was there for almost 13 years, had a bunch of different jobs. But the key thing is when I was there, that's when sort of the digital, explosion, revolution, whatever you want to call it, happened. Social media was born. And it was definitely a pivotal part of just media and storytelling, right? After that, I went to Condé Nast. I ran Alert.com. Condé Nast was going through its own digital evolution. And then I went to Facebook and Instagram. I became the global editor-in-chief of Refinery 29, and now I'm at BET. So I am pro-creative, pro-creator, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
And we have Sidney.
Hi, everyone. I am Sidney Madison Prescott, and I am a technology executive based here in New York City. I formerly was the global head of intelligent automation at Spotify. I just recently left there 2 weeks ago, #tech layoffs. So I am exactly. So now I'm focusing on consulting different Fortune 500s and my own startup. And prior to Spotify, I was responsible for digital transformation efforts at E-Trade, Bank of New York Mellon, Fiserv, which is the world's largest financial payments provider. So in essence, I'm very focused on specifically finance and engineering. And then, as many of my panelists have said, there are very few people that look like me in a room, specifically in engineering. And so my focus has been how to really make sure that the voices are heard in those executive meetings, in those conversations around how do we scale the enterprise, how do we transform the enterprise, what are we doing in terms of engineering culture. And I found myself becoming an advocate really for women in technology, specifically women of color in technology, who are looking to bridge that gap between middle management and executive leadership. And I'm also a published author of a few different books and academic publications.
Next, we have Rumi.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Rumi Chunara. I am so flattered to be here tonight amongst this amazing group, all of you. So I'm an associate professor at NYU, so probably the least interesting of all these folks. But I'm really happy to connect with everyone here. So I am a professor in computer science and public health. So I teach and do research all about data and using data to find out all the things that affect our health. And we focus uniquely on things like social factors, culture, environment, all those things that we know have a really big impact. And we do that at Center I direct, the Center for Health Data Science. So I love my job because I get to teach a lot of really young and inspiring students all the time. And they help us kind of realize some of the current issues. We actually, doing this from the data science side, we open up the toolbox and we look at the kind of algorithms and things we're talking about to see what the issues are. And so I'm happy to share that here tonight. And I also just love people coming together over topics that are super fascinating. So look forward to chatting more.
And then we also have Brandon, who we're going to introduce. Save the best for last.
Hey, everyone. My name is Brandon Smithwrick. I'm a creator. I'm a strategist. Currently, I'm the head of content at Songfinch, but previously I was a content lead at Squarespace. And before that, I did social media strategy for Polo. So I've worked within the fashion field, worked within the tech field, but my focus has mainly been trying to figure out how algorithms work on the social side and helping brands beat the algorithm with social content.
And before we hop into our conversation, I do want to thank Soho Works here at 10J for allowing us to use this space for this conversation. It's needed. We need more spaces like this. All right, so my first question is for Rumi. As a content creator, and I'm sure there's other creators in the room, by raising how many creators we have in a room? Okay, boom, period. We know the algorithm for, when it comes to our metrics, when it comes to campaign KPIs and all of those other like technical things. But can you tell us what the algorithm is from like an engineering standpoint?
Sure. So, first of all, I just want to highlight that these kind of things like algorithms or automated rule decisions are kind of permeating everywhere. So that's all over the place. I work a lot on the health side. So, like, all these things affect our lives, like who gets selected for certain care management programs from insurance companies or loans through banks. And of course, like media platforms, like what gets surfaced on your Netflix or recommended on Amazon. So we all know that it's been, in the popular press a lot lately as well. So how do these things work? So you can imagine kind of old school way might be just by certain rules, right? So like which posts get elevated might be based on, if content is X and it might get more enhanced. But nowadays, because there's so much information, so much data, a lot of those things are automated based on past data, right? So whatever was successful previously might inform what gets pushed up going forward. And so what kind of information is that? How do these things work? Well, there's all sorts of ways. Could be based on the content, could be based on connections between this information and other ones, could be based on just kind of like sentiment around things, so not like the actual topics. And so these are the kind of information that gets used to inform what gets pushed forward. Yeah.
Okay. And I know that also with the algorithm, it's a lot of AI and machine learning. And in one of the articles that you've co-written, you talk about how these algorithms are taught based on whoever's creating them, right? So can you tell us a little bit about the advocacy that you do for algorithmic biases and like what that looks like on a day-to-day?
Yeah, great. So this was actually a paper with a great title that really happy that it was found, called No Computation Without Representation. So the idea is that, of course, algorithms can be biased based on what data is used. We've all heard about this in facial recognition and in text. And of course, the data matters. But yeah, the other thing to highlight is that what kind of questions are asked or what topics are there, that all matters too, right? So, and this is in many fields, we know in business, in innovation, the more diverse teams are, the better they do. And so that means like the kinds of topics considered will be more diverse, or the ideas, or, how we kind of configure it. And so that's kind of the general idea that we promote from the academic side, is that whoever's building these algorithms needs to come from very diverse teams that have different perspectives, and we'll all benefit that way. And so even on the academic side, I mean, who's doing research on these topics? It's very like narrow kind of views or groups of people. And so from the academic side, besides writing papers, we also at the center that I work at, we kind of promote like knowledge exchange. So having people from different places, different backgrounds come together to exchange ideas and work together, because honestly, the work is going to be better that way.
Right. I love how you talked about algorithms not just being media, it's in healthcare, it's in our media, our entertainment, and in our music too. That me to my next question for Sidney. Now, I love Spotify, girl. Anybody else love Spotify? Okay. Now, one thing about the Spotify algorithm, it is going to tell me what I love to listen to. Okay. Can you, tell us about how the developers behind these algorithms have the responsibility to show up and to make sure that they are not, putting their own biased opinions into these computations?
Absolutely. So this is a really interesting topic, and I'm going to lift it a little bit above Spotify and take it more to just developers in general and companies. So when we think about the different products that are out here in society, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Apple, Siri, whether it is the Spotify algorithm that's putting together your playlist, behind the scenes, we have all of these engineers that are developing these different products and the functionality. And one of the challenges that I would say the industry as a whole has, the tech industry, is the bias that is in just the way that we even cultivate the engineering culture within these different companies. So typically we see low representation of women, lower representation of women of color, lower representation of men of color when we talk about engineering, again, as an industry. And we all have biases, but as we also know, the socially constructed biases that differ between races and ethnicities, those come out when we start looking at the different ways that we actually produce work. And so the question becomes, as the tech companies build all of these different products, what are they doing to ensure that the engineering cultures within the organization reflect the same level of diversity as the population, the general population? And by and large, we the technology industry is failing at that right now. And the other challenge that we have is, how do we ensure that developers have the right tools to understand, accept, and change the biases that are negatively influencing or negatively impacting the work from the engineering side? And we haven't really tapped into what it means to address that question, where there's a lot of diversity initiatives within technology, but they're not really touching on the core developer population, and answering and asking the hard questions, right? Which is, are we asking the right questions in the rooms where we're doing code reviews, where we're talking about the product, where we're talking how the product impacts the customer? When we talk about customer profiles, what are we doing to ensure that we're not inadvertently putting bias into the customer profiles that the developers are then building products based off of? And I think that core question just comes down to, are we doing enough within the engineering culture to ensure that we're asking the tough questions in rooms where it might just be a very small circle of engineers going through code reviews, going through testing, right? Understanding the results of what they're building.
We know also that these technologies are built almost like human brains, right? They're also evolving with us as humans. I live in Los Angeles, y'all, and there's robots delivering Uber Eats. Okay. It's insane. But just to hear what you just shared shows that this technology is real. And we need more people to have a seat at the table. My next question is for Simone. I'm sure you've seen in your personal life and in your professional life how these racial inequalities and biases have, affected us as Black people, as a Black woman. Can you maybe speak to a moment in time where might have had to correct someone in the workplace or in a personal experience when it comes to a bias that they might have learned from an algorithm or something online?
I'm going to go a little bit back in time. I don't know if you all remember Natalie Holloway, who went missing. She was a young white woman who went on vacation in Aruba, I think it was, and she disappeared. And so the way the national media handled that story was, I think, probably my biggest education, because I was a young editor at the New York Times, national desk, answering the phones, #phones with cords in them, and answering the phones. And I went to the National Association of Black Journalists conference, and all the journalists in the room were just everyone is telling this story, making it seem like the people in Aruba have, assaulted this woman, but there's three sides to the story. We're not telling the whole story. And it was about the framing of the story. And first, I was very frustrated, very angry. And I'm like, I don't understand. Just tell the facts. Why is there a slant to the story? And at that point, I looked around the newsroom and it was dominated by white men. And it wasn't some sort of, nefarious conspiracy, let's frame the story negatively or with a slant. But what I realized was, when they see Natalie Holloway, they see their daughter, their niece, their neighbor. There's a certain connection that they felt with Natalie, that it came through in the storytelling. It came through in the reporter that they assigned. It came through in the edit. It came through in the photo selection. It came through in the caption selection, right? And so, to both of your points about the engineers that we hire, right? Representation within media, the people that, we bring on, the people who are doing the storytelling, they're capturing it from other people. That matters, right? Because at the end of the day, man is making the code, right? and man is running the companies. And companies are they're always going to prioritize their product. And they know sometimes you can build a product and culture each strategy for breakfast, right? And so you may build it one way and it comes back to you in a whole other way. But it was very clear to me at, very early 20s. I was like, this is what it is. So we need more of all of us in the room so we can all come to the table and tell the story and make sure that we're highlighting the blind spots, right? So that was just like a personal, moment. And then eventually, okay, Twitter was born, Instagram was born, all these things happened. And that's when, again, you started to see what photos dominate your feed, right? And obviously, like, the algorithm is like, when we say the algorithm, we make it seem like it's this beast in the corner, like hiding in the curtains. Like, algorithms tend to be living, breathing things that evolve based on product priorities, right? Company priorities. Based on company goals, again, you look at what's in your feed. And I remember, okay, I'm interacting with photos of fashion photos by Black photographers, a lot of, Black models, but I'm still getting served up, not that, And so, again, I had to do my own research and just remember, okay, because I'm the other in the room, I have to always remember to keep that lens because that brings value to an organization, especially if you're at a Condé Nast or a New York Times or an Instagram or wherever, right? So I feel like I'm not answering your question directly, but that part of the journey has been eye-opening, and I do think it's valuable to others in the room to just remember, if you're in a position to hire, if you are on a team, if you're building a product, if you're trying to sell something, right? Just understanding that diversity within your team is powerful, and it's all of our responsibilities, and particularly the media industry, because we have such a huge platform. People nowadays, they tend to interact with people more than people, so brands actually have it the hardest. But again, they still have large platforms. So the responsibility is on all of us, starting with how we hire and how we diversify our teams.
I really love that. I really love that answer. Let's give it a round of applause for that. It's good. I even, as a creator, take it a step further. I've many times have been the token Black girl. I felt like in a lot of campaigns, in a lot of rooms. And when brands ask for feedback, I have to tell them, like, hey, it was great that you guys added me onto this campaign, but I would have liked to see more people that look like me. So if you are a creator and you're seeing that within campaigns, or brands are asking, who else can we hire for this? You put your people on, like, put us on, put other people on, extend the reach, and, help us get a seat at the table, because we're all in this together.
I think you make a really good point too, right? Like, not everyone feels that empowered to speak, truth to power. But I just want to, underscore that if you do feel comfortable, say it out loud, right? Because I think sometimes you have this feeling we're like, well, I'm just lucky to get the opportunity. And it's like, well, they're lucky to have you. And I understand that this is an opportunity. So finding that balance and finding your voice within that is really, really key. And honestly, sometimes, there's executives making this decision, and they really do need somebody to be like, you keep casting light-skinned people, and that's great, but, like, we come in all shades and colors, and it's like, don't focus on one, we're diverse people. Most peoples are diverse peoples, right? So just having those honest conversations, especially around casting, that's another area, right? Like hiring, casting, still to this day, I think fashion in particular, we have a long way to go. A lot of strides have been made. And I'll just tell you one last story. I remember Essence Magazine did this article years ago, probably like 15, 16 years ago. And it was some new data that came out around Black women and their marriage rates, slowing down. And I was just minding my business, trying to get some coffee in the middle of the day. I won't say who it was, but it was a person in leadership who was a white male. And he was like, hey, Simone. And I was like, and he was like, did you see that article in Essence? And I was like, I read the whole book, so, like, I don't know, like, which article, and he was just like, is it true? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he was just like, I just can you just share some insight? Like, are Black women getting married less, And I was just like, I can't represent all of us. And I think that's the thing, like, we're all diverse. And at that moment, I wanted to go, I put like, I care, like, I didn't, because I love being employed. But I was like, well, here's the deal. I was like, that data point obviously came from someone's research, right? Like, there was a sample study, like, large enough for this to be published. The reporter did their due diligence. But, I was like, you always want to look at these stories and think about, okay, this is so one story, right? And it's an avenue to get information out. And so I just use that as an opportunity to be like, listen, anytime you read an article in Essence, like, let's just talk about it maybe in our edit meetings and not when you pull the one Black girl at the styles desk on the way to the bathroom or to get coffee. And he was just like, no, you make a good point. You make a good point. And I was like, thanks, Trip. Come and go.
We appreciate you for those moments and especially for sharing that because it's hilarious. I'm sure that we've all had those moments. My next question is for Pierre. You are alumnus of the Meta Creator program, We the Culture. And I want to know from your perspective as a Black male, do accelerator programs like those programs help us expand our network in business when the algorithm isn't doing it for us?
That's a very good question. And, I've been ideating on that since I did the program. I would say that there were pros and cons to the experience. It allowed me, one of the pros was that it allowed me to have the freedom and the financial backing to foresee one of the goals and dreams that I wanted to do as far as like creating a show in which I can talk to my creative contemporaries. And although that program was good as far as like getting the financial backing, I felt like it was lacking in the sense of the support on the platform itself, right? Because I think at this point, we all know that it's like a push of a button and then people can see whatever they want to see, And oftentimes that isn't the case because, it's a business at the end of the day and people pay for that kind of visibility. If we are going to say that we're going to do something as far as like help highlighting Black and brown creatives in this lane, we should split it with, do it our whole chest, you know what I'm saying? Kind of halfway. And so like that's one of the things that I would say was, like I said, the pros and the cons of working with the platform in that sense. But I think it's also up to the creators because I don't want to just put all the responsibility on the platforms. I think it's also up to the creators to now strategize, like deep strategy on how you can maximize the opportunity. It may not always be how you want it, but you should always look at it and see where are the holes that can take this to the next level.
That's good. Thank you for sharing that. That you spoke about strategy, which I think is very important. I work full time in influencer marketing, and I do a lot of like brand strategy for different household names. When it comes to influencer campaigns and casting talent, strategy is really important. And I think that some creators don't realize that strategy can help you beat the algorithm sometimes. Speaking of strategy, I would love to take it to Brent. You're a content creator. And you also oversee content for different brands. You're now at Songfinch. Congratulations to that. Can you speak to the creators in the room when it comes to how important SEO and brand strategy is when it comes to, putting yourself out there?
I think it's very important. The main reason being is similar to like what Pierre said, right? These platforms aren't going to prioritize us. We need to kind of figure out how the algorithms work and do it for ourselves. So when I think about that question, my mind immediately went to Pinterest, right? When we all look for hairstyles, we have to type in hairstyles for Black people, right? That within itself is suppression because we are not prioritized, but then the SEO part comes for Black people. So when you're looking at platforms or you're publishing your own content, think of it as what is someone looking for that I will be discovered? In like the most simplest terms, like what are the key words? What is someone looking for? Like how can I be prioritized to the top? How can I improve my ranking? Because ultimately, we know TikTok, YouTube, all these platforms are search engines. And then to the other part of the question in terms of like building your online presence and kind of going beyond that, I do think having a website does help you because these social platforms are rented space. If Twitter goes down next year, it's done.
It's a wrap.
If Instagram's down, you can't talk to your audience. But if you have a mailing list, if you have your ownable presence, I do think that's important because in some ways, like these platforms aren't going to prioritize us and making sure that when someone or a brand wants to work with you, they're not judging everything off your Instagram page. I have my own website that explains my full story in detail. And that's kind of taking it into your own hands.
Oh, I love that so much because I'm definitely one of those content creators who are like, I'm good on Instagram. I don't want to be on TikTok. I can't keep up with YouTube shorts. But hey, as a creator, as an entrepreneur, we have to be able to pivot. And it's really important that we understand that these social platforms are rented spaces. Like we don't own these platforms. When Instagram crashes, everybody be like, yo, what's good? Like, Where my followers? Y'all better get an email list. Okay. Oh my gosh. So, all right. So my next question is for Nneya. You are a mental health advocate and you're a creator yourself. You have a beautiful website.
To update that.
Girl, I didn't even think you had to update it. It looks so good. Can you speak to the creator in the room who's struggling because their metrics do not match their work ethic?
Yes, absolutely. I think that, how many people in here put something up and they're like, what's wrong with my numbers? And it's what you were super passionate about. Like, I actually mean raise your hands. All right. And then something that
I'm ready to cry.
Exactly. And there's that comparison loophole that you get into and you're forced, you can't figure it out. You're like, why is Instagram pushing this? And there's that commodity of attention. And sometimes it's the idea of negative attention, that if you have a post that you're complaining about something versus your amazing trip that you took or like a beat face, it's not going to do as well. And that's what I think is important about the idea of having your website, building community. There needs to be a place that you can go and you can reach your audience that you truly connect with, truly that you can go to these brands and say, hey, look at this message I got. Look at this DM I got. Look at this Twitter message I got. Look at this email I got. And it's when you get into the space with these brands, it's not just the numbers, but showing that proof of action, showing those conversions that you get, that someone's like trying this car because of you versus the numbers so, but yeah, someone actually booked that trip. And that's really just as important as numbers, and brands are starting to see that now, finally, that, that there's less, someone might have 1 million followers, but less engagement. And they're finally getting on board and figuring that out. And American Influencer Council is a big advocate of it. And building that community helps your mental health because you have to remember who you're creating for, who you want to touch. I have so many people that say, I want to be an influencer. What do you want to influence? Like, what do you want to do? and why are you getting into the field? And what is your message? Because it's that message that keeps you going. It's not the number of likes that you got that's going to keep you going. So what do you want to influence? And I think that is your way to connect to your community, and that consistent messaging kind of keeps you on deck. It's an outline for what you want your career, your life. It bleeds into your personal life, what you want it to be.
That's good. Thank you. I've even noticed as a creator, showing up as a solution helps you really connect with your audience. Like, I know we always want to pop out on Instagram, y'all, and show all the good things happening and all that stuff. But like, the truth is we are not always lit, popping, great lighting, happy every day. Like, that's the truth, right? So it's like when you show that vulnerability and you show up as the solution to your audience, whether if it's just a solution of finding a way to get through the day, they feel a lot more connected with you and a lot more willing to like be there with you when you're down and also be there with you when you up. So I just had to sprinkle that in there too. But I want to hear from you guys. What does algorithmic choice mean to you?
Well, I mean, algorithmic choice to me, in a sense, and it's something that I've actually been like really thinking about a lot, right? Because, go back to her point, it's like, who am I creating for and what am I doing it for? I think oftentimes we can get the formula for an algorithm and be like, oh, if I do it on this day and I post this kind of content and I get this, I'll get these amount of likes. And then it becomes so formulaic that it's like, are you really even creating anything? Or are you just really just going through the motions to fill a need? And as a creative, these are the questions that we always constantly have to go through in our heads before we even make any kind of creative decision, because it's like, is what I'm putting out pure, At the end of the day, what I want to think about, what I want to create, and what I present to my audience, I want it to be very pure from my heart, and not so much in having gone through these certain recipes in order to get to them, And so I think with the algorithm, I would love for creatives to focus more so, back on Nneya's point, your audience, like your core people who are going to be there, whether it's sunny outside, whether it's raining. Those are the people who understand your creative to its core. So maybe the brand partner that you worked with doesn't understand your style or messaging, but that person who followed you for the past 2 years, 3 years knows like, oh, I know what he means when he does this, or I know what she means when she does that. I think those connections are one of the most purest connections you can have and should actually strive for online, as opposed to, like I said, the formulaic route of creating and presenting it to a mass audience.
I love that you spoke to the point of being pure. You know, a lot of people work and show up on the internet for the metrics, for the hype, not to serve, not to help someone. And you really truly do see a difference in your reach when you are here to serve rather than to, just get the likes. What does algorithmic choice mean to you guys?
I think just piggybacking off of that, it really is about speaking to your audience. I totally agree with that, because there was an article that came out probably about a week and a half ago about TikTok. And it was about how TikTok employees actually have more impact than you realize over, which I was like, guys, this is like, it's like, oh, it's a secret. Oh my gosh. But I'm like, well, realistically, like from behind the scenes as an engineer, we have so much control, so much more control than you would even imagine over what we're building, what you get to see at the end of the day, and what we see on the back end, that it almost becomes as if as a creator, you have the by saying like, oh, I'm going to work around the algorithm. It's just the illusion of choice. You really don't have a choice, right? Like you're using, but hear me out, because you're using someone else's technology that they built, that you are not familiar with the back end. You're not familiar with APIs. You're not familiar with algorithms, right? You're not building the machine learning algorithm yourself. So you're taking other people's word for how it works and what you need to do to navigate around it. Whereas if you focus on your core audience, to everyone's point, your audience knows you. They know your authentic message. They know what you were trying to put out in the world. That will come through no matter what is happening with the algorithm. Like your authentic self, if you are truly putting yourself out there and you have a core vision of what you are doing in social media as an influencer and what is your impact in the world, that will always come through, no matter whether Meta goes to crap and, goes out of business, whether Elon blows up Twitter. Like those are all things out of our control. But what we can control truly is just the core of, am I being real with myself, and am I being real with what I create? Right.
Just to quickly build upon that, over 80% of what people watch on YouTube is determined by the algorithm. So a lot of times we think like, no, I'm choosing the content I watch. Most people just click whatever's on their home feed, and the algorithm works even when there's autoplay or the playlist, right? A lot of times we're not choosing. Even TikTok, you open it up, all your audio is muted, like whatever I was listening to stops, and whatever TikTok wants me to see is what I'm now focused on. So a lot of times the algorithms do control what you are seeing, but when I think about algorithmic choice, it also kind of speaks to creators choosing what algorithms you want to mess with. Like if you're like, I'm not going to keep following Instagram trends because Instagram is going to change every single day, and they tell me to do reels, now TikTok's doing carousels, and now this, like everything's always changing. Whatever platform you feel like, you know what, this is authentic to me, I get this feels right, just go with that. For me, I'm on LinkedIn more than any other platform. And it's kind of interesting because like no one's making content on LinkedIn. It's fun.
It's fun. It's real.
Still with it.
Here, you can't hide on LinkedIn. I'm gonna go and see how many connections you got.
And don't.
That's good. I'm so happy that you brought up that point about being a creator on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn even created a creator program where now they're like, putting budget behind creators on LinkedIn, which is really important because that's exactly what we're talking about here today, about like, being a resource, being a vessel of information, right? So if there's creators on LinkedIn sharing information in regards to their industry, then there you have it right there. You're connecting.
Add something maybe just to, first of all, I totally agree with everybody said kind of the right, the point, and it made me really think about it that, and I wanted to say something motivational too, because there's kind of like the algorithms on these platforms, and there's the algorithm of life too, right? And that's what I'm hearing is like, which algorithm are you choosing to engage in? And that kind of ties to like me thinking like, everybody here it's just one room here in Brooklyn, but like, and is a lot of folks on this panel have said and kind of alluded to this point, which is like you change these stories, you change the culture, and you change the world. So you got to keep doing what you're doing.
Y'all, I'm not even gonna lie. Sometimes I got Alexa at home. I'd be like, Alexa, $1 million. You just gotta whisper a few things into the algorithm these days, okay? I need to show up at the door tomorrow. By a show of hands though, for real, how many times have you been in like conversation or you've seen an ad on Gymshark or something, all of a sudden it's on YouTube, it's on your work laptop? That literally shows you guys that these algorithms are constantly listening. They're constantly paying attention to what you're engaging with. So sometimes even I have to take a moment when I'm scrolling and be like, do I really like this or is it just popping up? Like, is it just relevant to like, what everybody else is doing? But
And also,
Of conscious scrolling that, it's not in our business to tell people you should take a break off of social media. I want you on social media. I want you looking at my content. But because of that, I'm not adding to that negative feeling that you have on social media. And it's about what we put out there, that my space that I've created on social media. Even if the algorithm is serving it to me, I can keep scrolling and feeling empowered to do that. And the idea, like you said, about the trends, like not necessarily needing to keep up with the trends because you'll drive yourself crazy as a creator, as a content consumer. So it's about making those choices for yourself and saying, like, we can't keep talking about the algorithm like it's the man for the new creators. And, it's giving the man energy. And so we need to figure out how we are all going to kick that door down and make space and bringing it in. And I think that's the community engagement part of what we all do.
period. I love that.
And also with the algorithm, it also goes back to like what you're consuming as well, right? Like just because I watch something doesn't mean I want to see it 10 million times on my timeline. And, as a matter of fact, some of the things that, it comes across your timeline for 2 seconds and then it just messes up your whole day, right? And so like these are the things too where she means like the algorithm of life. It's like it's also about putting the phone down and going outside and touching grass and like getting out in there, you know what I'm saying? Because that's the stuff that's really going to rejuvenate you in order to create and, be more productive.
I feel like they holding y'all accountable. Y'all need to put your Instagram down and go for a walk tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Let's just give a round of applause to our panelists.
Creators with Influence is produced by the American Influencer Council, the sole 501c6 not-for-profit trade association in the U.S. created by and for career creators.